Hello and welcome to the 2 Minute Drill Podcast. I'm Michael Rochman, that's Dean Bruce. We already talked about the top offensive linemen yesterday, but today we are talking about some of the sleeper offensive linemen in this draft class, guys that could potentially rise up the boards over time. And, there's plenty of exciting options. We talked about all the potential for last episode and talking about some of the top guys and how they have another step that could really kind of help them achieve that. But there's plenty more. But before we get into any of it, Dean, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to talk about the depth in this class. I mean, there's some good guys who should do well on day three, even sneak into day two, a couple of them, I feel.
Yeah, so without further ado, I think we might as well just get started and I'll take it off with the first guy. And I'm going to go with Marcus Bryant, a left tackle that had been with the SMU Mustangs for a while now, transferring over to the Missouri Tigers. 6'8", 318 pounds is the listed size. Maybe a little lighter right now, but I think that weight will come in time, especially with NFL strength and conditioning. This is a guy that I think has the athleticism, the foot speed, and the overall ability to kind of win his matchups on the outside. The big issue for me right now is just his lower half strength, and I think that's something that can develop with the weight added and eventually develop a better anchor to where he's able to sustain better against power. And I think he has the makings of a very impressive left tackle. Whether that happens right now in this year with Missouri or whether that happens further along in his career in the NFL, I think he's someone to keep an eye on, and I think he's a very exciting prospect.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the leverage was really strong. I was expecting, a little bit less positive like moves from him considering he's so tall, but I thought his footwork was pretty strong. I thought his leverage was good. I'm a little worried about that power profile because even though he's like 6'8", that like less lightweight, I mean, he's probably a little under 313 right now, like you said. But I think it still showed really strongly in the pass game. I think once he gets to the SEC level, he's going to go up against higher end talent, and if he can sort of hang with those greats at the college level, then I think we're looking at a guy who can sneak into day three pretty easily. Just good size, good athletic profile. He's kind of the type of guy you want to build if you're looking for a guy, kind of like a you know budget Joe Alt if you're looking for that type of dude, just in terms of build, not to get too lofty.
Yeah, he was one of the more coveted prospects entering the transfer portal, especially later in the portal when a lot of guys had already signed and committed to new schools. I'm pretty sure USC was pretty heavily involved in trying to recruit him. Missouri ended up landing him, replacing Javon Foster. This offense is very exciting for the Tigers, but a lot of it is due to the weapons that are surrounding the offense. Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, Brady Cook in the backfield, and obviously the transfer running backs they had coming in. But the offensive line needs to be strong if they want to really be at their best, and Marcus Bryant's going to play a big role in that.
Yeah, I think that whole offense is going to experience a boost because some of those transfer ads. I mean, Luther Burden's coming back, Brady Cook's coming back, but that duo of Marcus Carroll and Nate Noel, I think will really help boost that team. I think if Bryant can really get his run blocking in order, I think we're going to be seeing a really three-dimensional offense from the Missouri team this year. I think they could really surprise some people.
Yeah, I agree. So moving forward now, how about you reveal sleeper number one for your offensive lineman?
Well, I've got another guy who's coming in at about 6'8", 313. I mean, he's listed at 6'8". I think he's probably closer to 6'6". But Ozzy Trapilo at Boston College, to me, I thought he was a good mover with solid footwork. And I thought he really surprised me because he carried some juice and run blocking that I wasn't expecting. I mean, he comes in at 313 and he moves pretty well. So you kind of expect sort of the sprint profile to take a hit because I think he's only about like 310. That's what he's listed. And I would say he looks even a little skinnier. He's also not as long as I would always like, but I think he's really great at controlling his body. I love a guy who's coordinated and good at like, squaring his hips, moving sort of like I'm thinking like a tripod, but I mean, like just sort of flipping those hips really well. And he just, even when he gets like pushed back in the pass game by a stronger edge, I think he's really great at recovery and getting his anchor back. I think that's a trait you can build on. I think that's something that's always going to be like, good to find in the like college game is if you can, even if you're having a bad rep, come up, get your footing back and start stonewalling. I think that's sort of a good move. I'm a little, wary of Boston College's chances in the ACC just because they don't have the weapons that they usually have. They don't have a Zay Flowers type this year. They're like Ryan O'Keefe didn't really pan out for him, and like Castellanos is kind of just a scrambler for him. But if there's anyone who can sort of pave the way for whatever running back or is heading up Boston College now that Pat Garwo's out of there, then I think Trayshawn Ward is in that offense now. The guy I liked from Kansas State. I think if there's anyone who he should be running up against, it's Ozzy Trapilo.
Yeah, he's 6'8". I think the listed size was 309 pounds. So Definitely a little undersized, and those numbers are usually a little gassed up by the schools to where, once the combine comes around, it's a little bit lighter. It wouldn't surprise me if he's able to add weight over the course of the year. So that's certainly something that's on the table. But I really like his length, and I think he does a really nice job of getting extended and getting to the point of attack first when it comes to his defenseman. The big question right now for me, obviously, there's strength, but I think also when you're looking at an athletic lineman, you kind of understand that that's going to be a part of it. But I think there's a lack of explosiveness for me whenever it comes to the short area burst to kind of latch on and find those guys in short area to where it kind of leaves me questioning his overall ceiling. I think this is still a very intriguing type of day three lineman that'll be able to stick around in the draft process if he chooses to declare. I'm not sure what the eligibility is for him. But this is someone that I think is going to be exciting for the Eagles. I'm a little higher on Castellanos a little bit. I think he's just such a playmaker. I know they have Robichaud coming back, so there's going to be some experience in that offense to where he's going to have some ability, and Trapilo is going to be a big part of it. But I don't know. There's still some question marks for me, but I think this is a very comfortably confident lineman that's going to continue to succeed for the Eagles of Boston College.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right that he's less of an explosive mover and more of a smooth mover. So I can totally see the ceiling being capped. I think there's some traits there that you can build off of. Who are you feeling for your next sleeper? Who's coming out of your list?
Yeah, so we're going to stick with the second offensive tackle that I have, and that's Jordan Williams, the right tackle for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. He has experience on both sides. He is 6'6", 315 pounds, but I feel like he plays a little heavier, at least looks like it. He's pretty strong. He's got some nice physicality in his play and explosion. I wouldn't say that this is necessarily the most fluid guy, but it's someone that matches speed pretty well on the outside for as much as you need him to. He's got the, just overall well built frame. I feel like he doesn't have like one lacking area in his frame. It's just overall very well filled out. And I think he's someone that, is just steady. The Yellow Jackets have been kind of looking to continue building in the right direction, but the offensive line has played a big part in that. Jordan Williams has been a consistent mainstay for that offensive line. He's someone that I have been paying attention to now for, I think, about 2 years. Last offseason, I was watching Georgia Tech just trying to figure out some guys they could have drafted. And I was really impressed with Williams. Came back this year, went over to right tackle, and he continued to impress. It wouldn't surprise me if this is someone now in his fifth year that I think could be one of the top guys of the ACC when it comes to offensive linemen off the board. He's not going to be probably someone that enters into that day one conversation, but it wouldn't shock me if he's able to work his way into that late day two, early day three type of range.
Yeah, I mean, I thought his anchor was really strong. I thought he was just like really thickly built. I feel like Georgia Tech's strength and conditioning program has been consistent. I feel like they're always pumping out guys with really good builds, like really like I'm thinking like Keon White was a big defensive end. I mean, they've got a guy, Zeke Biggers, who's huge and he's built super well. I feel like Jordan Williams is sort of continuing that trend. I saw he might play guard next year, which could be interesting. I felt like he sort of carried a like positional versatility type thing because he's so strong and thickly built. Like I felt like he was generally good in terms of hand placement, but I think the only thing I was really looking for him from was one game to game consistency. I felt like he did pretty well against Georgia, but then I watched him against North Carolina and his play was kind of all over the place. He kind of got his shit pushed back every couple of reps by some of their like pass rushers. I saw Rucker get a few on him, but I was pretty happy with his Georgia play, which felt like a good sign for a guy who's making progress. I mean, is he capped out on eligibility? I felt like he's sort of coming into his make or break year.
I'm not sure on COVID. I think he may have one more season, but I'm not absolutely positive. And another thing I want to say, there was a lot of times where they would use him as the lead blocker on runs, and I felt like he pulled pretty well. He wasn't necessarily like, running downfield with great speed where you're like, holy cow, who the hell is this? But he's someone that, has enough power behind his pads, has the athleticism to do so, and I think he's going to be able to effectively do so in the NFL as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to keep up with Jamal Haynes, you're going to have to bring a little speed. So I think him keeping pace well enough to get those pull blocks says a decent bit about his athletic floor, and I feel like it's going to be enough to keep him going in the NFL draft process. Probably get himself drafted.
Yeah, so now moving on to your second sleeper, who do you got?
I'm sticking with I'm sticking outside the ACC for a change. I'm talking about Falili Famoe from Washington State. I felt like well, so he comes in with an interesting story. He's a converted defensive end. He came into Wazoo at like 225 pounds or something. He's up to like 310 now. He's gained 85 pounds over the course of his career, and he still kept that strength and athletic profile from his days at defensive end. And I felt like he carried in some of that defensive end skill set as well because he understands counters so well and he mirrors really great. I think his strength and athleticism in general are going to be highly coveted in the class. I thought his power profile was very strong. He just does the dirty work and is a great finisher and run blocking. I felt like, he was able to get out there and pull. He was able to, push guys to the ground. I saw plays where he was getting pancakes. I'd like him to do a little better about establishing a base and setting his anchor, but I think ultimately he's a guy who should make waves in the process. I saw Brugler had him, I think, senior OT 3 or 4. So maybe he's not getting as much sleeper like looks anymore. But I know early on in the season, the buzz around him was not as strong as it needed to be, and I was very happy watching him play. I think Washington State may take a little bit of a step back next year now that Cam Ward's gone, but I think that offensive line is still going to be very strong. They seem to consistently have good players along that line, and I think Famoe is just sort of a consistent, like, going to be a presence in the NFL draft conversations for the coming year. They're going to keep that streak going.
Yeah, so he's a very exciting lineman. I think he's someone that's really, it's easy to see the transition from the defensive side to offensive tackle. 6'5", 314 pounds. And I think that weight's just going to continue to improve and improve over the course of the offseason as he heads into the NFL. The biggest issue for me, though, whenever I was watching him, it wasn't necessarily with his anchor or his overall ability to work in his engagements. It's just the overall power in his hands, I think, was something that kind of lacked for me. I want to see him create more power with his pops, whether it's in pass protection, kind of offsetting the bull rush or the speed on the edge, or whether it's in the run game where he kind of generates that push strength and lands onto his defender and clears out ways for the running back to kind of find some easy yardage. That's just the aspect for me that I think is necessary for him to kind of take those next steps. He's in his third year starting, but this is still relatively new to him. So I think it's going to come along. But I don't know. There's certain steps that you still want to see entering 2024 if we want to see him kind of talked about as one of the top offensive tackles in this class. Like you said, there's been some hype for him. Brugler had him pretty high. So I think he's going to continue to see his name rise up boards and kind of get some higher expectations, higher praise. But this is someone that I think is definitely worth watching. And, a lot of players transferred away from these Oregon State, Washington State schools, but he's staying. I'm always going to stay, and I'm really excited to see how I can do in year 3 as a starter.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting time for him. I mean, I don't expect that record to be great, but I think his rise will be pretty consistent despite their record struggles. Offensive line's not a win dependent position.
Yeah, so now moving forward, we're heading to the interior offensive line. And my first sleeper is going to be Caleb Rogers, a guy that me and Dean both hold in pretty high regard. He was right tackle for the Red Raiders last year, but moving in to right guard this year. This is someone that I think just has a nice feel for his overall ability as a blocker. I think he is extremely impressive as an athlete. I have a clip that I posted on my Twitter if you guys want to check it out at MR_NFL draft, where he is like running upfield 40 yards to clear away as a pull blocker. This is someone that is very exciting. 42 starts in his career. So there is no question of experience. He's going to have probably like 54 plus as he enters the draft cycle, assuming he stays healthy. He gave Dorless some trouble, so I think he kind of has some ability, when it comes to handling defensive linemen and handling power. I don't know. I really like this. I think there's a trouble when it comes to latching onto his assignment and sealing off the edge whenever it comes to his tackle play. But now that he's moving inside, I really don't have many questions for him, and I think he's going to be a very exciting player. I think the age and just the like lack of upside when you're dealing with like an older prospect could certainly cap his ability to rise up boards. But I think this is someone that in the right system is an absolute stud and a great get.
Yeah, I think he moved really well. I thought his footwork was very strong. I felt like he was a pretty consistent pass protector for Baron Morton. I felt like, he had the ability to like, move around, sort of operate in that like in a zone system, but he also was able to drop his anchor and create like, like I said earlier, the pocket. I thought his agility was really great. I thought he moved laterally super well. I mean, and even moving down the field, I think he'll translate well to guard because I think he's already pretty athletic at tackle, and I think moving him inside, he's going to be one of the most athletic guards in the like NCAA landscape right now, just because I think he moves so well. I kind of agree though. I think his hand placement and generally like shooting out his hands at the right time. I think his timing's a little off, but that's something that we talk about like being something that gets fixed pretty quickly. Like we see guys who don't know what to do with their hands in the preseason who immediately fix it just with this new NFL coaching level. And I think that'll probably also help sort of fix his balance because I think sometimes he shoots it out, he lurches out, he loses his balance a little. But I liked him. I think he's kind of a just sort of a good floor prospect as far as guard goes because you're gonna get a solid athletic floor, you're gonna get a solid strength floor. I think in general, maybe yeah, I think him being older will cap his ceiling a little bit, but there's always gonna be room for swing guards and guys who you just need to play a few games when they're subbing in for guys with injuries and even get some not lose you games when they're starting. And I think Rodgers will have a place in the NFL with that kind of skill set. I think he does well for himself.
Yeah, good players are good no matter the age, and I think he's definitely talented. But moving forward to your next sleeper, I hear you're sticking in the state of Texas.
I am sticking in the state of Texas. I mean, he's not sticking in his original state. He's coming from Kansas. It's Armaj Reed Adams. And I was really high on Layden Robinson last year because he was super thickly built, had a great power profile, had about 34-inch arms, so had some tackle guard flexibility. Armaj Reed Adams sort of matches all of that for me. He's also very built. He's around like 335, 340. I mean, we could be juicing him, but he looks like super strong. And I mean, he's shown some flexibility out to tackle. He played a little bit of tackle at Kansas before, Bostic and Nowitzki sort of forced him around. But he sets his anchor down super quickly. His footwork is real shocking for a guy with that kind of size. I felt like he was very strong. I mean, we talked on the previous podcast with Tyler Booker about guys we like, we don't see a lot of big, powerful guys anymore. We're shifting sort of to zone guys, but I think Reed Adams is more of that power profile guy. And if you can get him in that scheme, I think he's just going to be a really good fit there because he sets himself up well for pass protection. He's very balanced. He keeps his stance very well. He's not the greatest mover, sort of similar to how Robinson was. I mean, Robinson surprised eventually, but he didn't look it on tape. And I don't think Reed Adams looks super athletic. I'd probably expect him around 5'3s, maybe even touching 5'4s, which could, sort of push him down. But I think he is a great finisher, and I think he showed some potential for pulling out on run blocks just more because even though he wasn't creating holes as efficiently, when he was getting two guys, he was knocking them down and taking them out of the play entirely. So if you have a running back with good reactive speed, I think Armaj Reed Adams will work well for him. Again, also would like some better hand placement, but again, that's something that can be fixed pretty easily. What do you think of him?
Yeah, I mean, this is someone that in the short area has really nice flexibility to get squared up on his defender, and I think he does that extremely well. There were some issues in terms of just seeing how he worked into the second level, but then I saw him kind of accelerate and turn it on. He was able to land on those next level defenders. So I'm like, all right, this is in his tool bag. He's just kind of playing more at a slower pace, and when he needs to turn it on, he does. And I don't think it's necessarily like a lack of effort or anything. I think it's just he's trying to make sure that he's like not working himself out of the player or not landing on defenders when needed. And he has that short area burst to kind of explode to the defense. And when you're 6'5", 330 pounds, you're going to make some clear ways whenever you're like paving out in the second level like that. So he's someone that I'm very excited about. Yeah, he was very good for Kansas. I watched him mostly at guard, and I don't know, he just did it all for the Jayhawks. He was definitely one of the more powerful guards when it came to just kind of anchoring down and stonewalling on the inside, but also he was effective in the run game to clear out space and move upfield and be able to kind of lead the way as a blocker. I think Texas A&M got a great add in this edition, and I think he's going to be continuing that success at the SEC level. I'm excited to see him against some of these bigger defensive tackles because, if he goes against like Nazir Stackhouse or like Jaheim Oates, like this is going to be great competition for him to go against. And, even if it's like Deion Walker, Omari Thomas, like there's just so many guys that he's going to have on the SEC slate. I don't know necessarily specifically what's the Texas A&M schedule looking like, but he's going to have his fair share of competition. I'm excited to see how he does against it.
Yeah, I mean, if we can see him get some tape against Deion Walker, that's a battle of the big bodies I'd like to see.
Yeah. So moving forward now to the next sleeper, I'm going to go with Richie Leonard V, Florida Gators to the Florida State Seminoles. He transferred this offseason, 6'2", 330 pounds. So he has very natural leverage, and I think he uses it pretty well. He's got some really great short area burst. He's someone that continuously gets squared up on his assignments, has a great combination, I think, of size and athleticism, that kind of thickness. He kind of fits into that Aaron Banks, Lakin Tomlinson type of mold. So it wouldn't surprise me if there's someone that like ends up as like a 49er or something similar where, he's using that power and that frame and thickness to be able to kind of hold down his fort as a pass protector, but then has the athleticism to operate in the run game as well. He's very exciting for me. I want to see him do a better job of just identifying defenders and picking up blocks. I think there are too many plays where he was kind of just standing around. If you are going to do that, that's fine, but try to find a body to put yourself onto and clear out space. And there's times where he would let defenders kind of get past him, just not realizing where they are. So I don't know. There's definitely some steps to take, but I think everything in terms of tools and traits is there for Leonard.
Yeah, I agree. I think his combination of size and athleticism is going to take him far. I thought he absorbed contact really well when he was able to, get squared up with those bodies. I felt like his base continually was set down and he kept his footwork up. I agree. I think there was times where the lights weren't all on, like he was just sort of looking for things to do and he wasn't finding them immediately, and it resulted in some like pressures that I wasn't super excited about. But I think that's just going to come with time at the position. I think he'll be able to iron that out the more he plays football. Like, I mean, he's I believe he's a senior, correct? Like he's
I think so.
coming into his fourth year or something.
I believe
Um,
so. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, he's still got time to develop. He'll be able to, get linked up with new set of offensive line coaches who have made some impressive strides with, Darius Washington and the like. So I think Florida State will be a good spot for him. I also thought he would look good in a San Francisco 49ers uniform. I think he could easily be an Aaron Banks replacement if that was something that was necessary. But I just felt like, his short area quickness was very strong, but, at times I would like to see him a little more in tune with the game. There was times where I felt like he wasn't picking up these delayed rushers like I would want him to. He was like looking for guys, but his eyes just weren't in the right place. But, I think overall, I think if he can sort of limit his low lights, his highlights will come through and, carry him to a, solid, like, felt like a fourth to fifth round area for him.
Yeah, fifth year senior. So very exciting. And I think he's going to be a big part of that Seminoles offensive line that is filled with a lot of impressive offensive linemen as they gear up to try to make a playoff push. So we'll see what happens for the Seminoles. But, moving forward now to your next sleeper, who do you got for us?
I mean, I caught him while I was watching Jack Nelson, who we talked about yesterday. I'm talking about Joe Huber. Joe Huber has sort of that profile that I hear a lot of NFL guys talking about that they look for former wrestling. And you can sort of tell because he engages well at the snap and carries a very strong upper body. He generates that great shock with his hands that you like to see. I felt like that was a little, limited in the guys that we were talking about earlier. But this guy, I felt like generated great pop. He's a little new to the guard position, and you can sort of tell because the awareness and run blocking doesn't come naturally for him. But I think that wrestling background and his movement skill is going to take him far. I mean, I'm a little wary of his long area quickness. I felt like he had a difficult time pulling at times, but when he was sitting back making a pocket for a guy, like I think who was playing last year, was that Tanner Mordecai? Um, for Wisconsin, he was setting up pockets for him, and Mordecai was able to manipulate that with his good pocket movement for a college quarterback. I felt like Huber was pretty generally setting a good anchor for him, and he was able to move down to that side. I would like a little bit better flexibility as well, but I think Huber is going to be a name who pops up in the draft conversation, especially as more guys are watching Jack Nelson next year. I think he'll get some residual love too, and because that's where I found him, and I think he stands out.
Yeah, 6'5", 310 pounds. Very nice size for him. I was similar boat for you. I really liked his latch ability. He had some nice hands, and when he got guys in his grips, he was able to really control the blocks. And I think that's where that wrestling background kind of comes in because once you have the grip and you can utilize your body in ways that are similar to the wrestling experience, I think it makes it a lot easier to kind of handle those matchups and clear out defenders. But yeah, I mean, as an athlete, I think there's still some very valid questions in terms of what he can offer. I think he struggled to pull outside of the tackles, and I think even getting into the second level, downfield speed, there were some questions for me. With that frame, that's where the big issue is. You kind of want him to be either a little bit heavier and have these issues, and it's fine because it's so big and so powerful, or it's he's a little lighter, but he also has the athleticism to move around the field and kind of lay those blocks out. So that kind of floating in between, that's where the big question mark is for me. But I do think there's some nice promise here in terms of what he can do in a gap and sort of short area zone type of blocking looks that, I do like his ability to kind of win inside the trenches and when he's kind of engaged in scrum mode to where he can kind of, win his abilities and showcase what he can do because I don't know. He got some really nice stuff to where you can buy into him. But yeah, the athleticism is the big question mark for me. And maybe that sort of comes as he gets more naturally experience as an offensive lineman, and playing next to a guy like Nelson with an offensive lineman also has Malman on there. Like there's a lot of impressive pieces to this Badgers unit, but I don't know. Huber's definitely a guy that I think could be talked about in draft circles, and maybe he's someone that we could hear his name called next April.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a possibility. I would like to see. I think at this point, it's going to be a matter of gaining weight if he's going to sort of build his strength profile up and sort of limit the issues that athleticism causes.
Yeah, so moving forward now, and we're heading to the center position. Look, this center class is one that really lacking a top dog. We talked about it last class where guys like Brailsford, needs to add a lot of weight. Guys like Jonah Monheim hasn't really had any snaps yet there. So there's a lot of question marks for who the top guy will be. Perhaps a guy that could be that top guy is Joe Michalski, center for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Me and Dean are a little split on him. Dean didn't like him as much, but 6'5", 305 pounds. And honestly, I thought he was a really good paver for the run game. And Ollie Gordon had a tremendous year when it came to running. And I felt like a lot of the credit went to the guards. Dalton Cooper is a very nice offensive lineman. But I thought Michalski did a really good job of just getting into that second level, clearing out ways, and finding ways to kind of turn out blocks to where there was easy run opportunities. The size is a little weird. He's a little taller than your average center, and I think that part could be an issue where maybe he's looked at as a guard for the NFL. But I don't know. I liked his ability. I thought he had some really nice sudden movement ability to where he was able to kind of get inside of the frame for a defender and clear out ways. He wasn't necessarily the dominant, overwhelming type of blocker, but I felt like he was play to play, consistently kind of making an impact to where Ollie Gordon was able to produce at the level that he did.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't love him as much as you did. I thought he kind of got into this sort of panic mode at times, or he was just sort of like, I think you saw a lot of good movement skills from that. And I saw a guy who sort of was struggling to diagnose delayed rushers and like pass protect and types like that. But I agree that his run blocking showed promise. I felt like he was doing as much as Dalton Cooper was in that run game. I felt like at times he was really engaging with his hands and like, sort of putting his body on the line for these guys. I felt like sometimes he opened up his chest a little too much to hand fighting and couldn't mirror as well as I liked. I think I'm seeing just a lack of technical refinement. I might be killing him too hard for it, but I think he does have a profile that a lot of NFL guys are going to like because he has a lot of snaps at the position. It feels like centers are being valued for experience these days because we're getting a lot of guys who at times are just converting to center and aren't prepared for the snap responsibilities. And I thought he snapped a pretty ball. I felt like Alan Bowman was sort of consistently catching a solid ball from him. I didn't see any issues with the snap that I see sometimes. I felt like at when we were talking about Alabama, there's a reason they had to bring Parker Brailsford in last year. So I think Oklahoma, it's important to have a center who can actually snap the ball. And it felt like Michalski was pretty consistent with that. But, overall, I wasn't as big on him, but I think the center class is really weak in general. So I think just his run blocking prowess is going to be enough to where he gets talked about maybe as a late draftable guy, maybe as a PFA. I think being the guy who's able to push Ollie Gordon to these high flying rushing numbers is probably going to say something about his play. I think he's probably doing a lot of work there that he's not getting enough credit for.
Yeah, so now we're going to wrap it up with the last sleeper for you, Dean. Who do you got on your list for us?
I'm bringing it back to the ACC. I've got Brian Stevens. And I mean, I found this guy because he showed up on the Feldman's list. And I mean, the expected 156 10-yard split intrigued me. And then the play that I got from watching the tape was what sold me. I mean, he's quick as hell. He moves very well for a center. I mean, he's a little bit scary in that he's a sub 300-pound center. He's, I think, measuring at 295. So I'd like him to get above that 300 mark. That's kind of a death knell at times. But I felt like his technical refinement was very strong too. I felt like he placed his hands well. He flipped his hips really quickly. It sort of reminded me of a Tanner Bortolini type, except 3 inches shorter. Like a guy who is very much able to redirect run blockers and defensive tackles with his athleticism because he's working in a speed space and they're all working in a power space. He's just able to, pick up blockers. He's able to take double teams partially because of his athleticism. He's a little rough when it comes to taking on guys in establishing a base. But I thought ultimately Stevens showed enough promise as an athlete and as a guy who had some technical juice. I felt like he was shooting his hands out well. He was doing everything at the right time that I was intrigued by him. I think he could easily be that day 3 center that we talk about who ends up getting some starting reps. Like it's looking Bordolini might at the Jets level. So that was sort of the inspiration I got from him. And I think that 10-yard split, the 156 would be the fastest at the combine last year. If that holds, which I mean, Feldman has a reputation of getting a little bit inflated numbers, but even like pushing that 0.1 up, that would still be a very impressive athlete from, an athletic performance from Stevens. So I'm excited about his future. I think Virginia is going to be a team that, doesn't get a lot of NFL hype, but I think Stevens is going to be the guy. If you look at that team, that's who you're going to be watching.
Yeah, 6'2", 300 pounds, has some experience at guard, and now is heading to center full time. This is a very exciting athlete. Like you said, he ended up on Feldman's freaks list. He has a listed 1.56 10-yard split. He has a 385-pound hang clean that's reported, and he has a game tracking miles per hour reached up to 18.7. So there's definitely some intrigue there. The play strength is the big issue for me. In terms of taking on power as a pass protector, too many times he collapsed into the pocket. As a run blocker, he even had some moments where he was kind of allowing defenders into the lane. He had moments where he got pushed back so far to where the running back had to kind of change his path. So there's question marks in terms of play strength. But I don't know. I just trying to learn from my mistakes. I was very low on Drew Dahlman, who ended up being a pretty good NFL center because of that issue. The play strength just wasn't there. But if you're able to surround him with some promising offensive linemen, some power on the inside that can kind of help him, the athleticism is going to really be an impactful type of trait to have on the inside. There's still ability. It's not like he's just getting like manhandled every single play. It's just sometimes there's moments where it's like, okay, we got to fix that. But, I think there's steps that he can take, and I think there's exciting traits for him. He's a 6-year senior, so he's probably not going to be someone that, works his way up into even day 2 conversation. But in that day 3 range, in a center class where there's kind of a lack of options, it wouldn't surprise me if Stevens is someone we're talking about as a viable late round sleeper.
Yeah, he feels like the dart throw that teams are going to be throwing when they need that swing center guard type who they're looking for. They're just looking for athletes who you can maybe, just have.
Hey everyone, sorry about this. There were some technical difficulties while recording. My Wi-Fi just did not want to act right, so unfortunately we lost the last of what Dean had to say and the outro for the show. Pretty much I'll wrap it up here in a quick recap that that was all for our offensive line sleepers. If you have some of your own, please comment down below and let us know some guys we should keep an eye on in the 2024 college football season. The next time you see us, we'll be talking about a loaded defensive tackle class that has the chance to be generational. We thank everyone for watching. That's Dean Bruce over there. I'm Michael Rochman. We're frozen, but we're here in spirit. And that's the 2-minute drill.